Hi, welcome to the next talk on how to lead a guided life. Hopefully you've already watched some of the earlier videos. The first one was on the magic of the guided life, where I shared about my life from that perspective and really emphasized that the magic of the guided life has to do with the way we feel, not the way things look on the outside or what we manifest or any of that stuff. That it has to do with the way we feel. And then we had a second video on sharing from our community, because the stream is a community, as I explained in the video, that was a community that was created by God in a very obvious way, because everything was set up for it to come into existence even before it really existed. And I quoted you, Christopher, in that video, so you'll probably want to watch that. And in that video, members of our community talked about their experiences of leading a guided life and what that's been like for them. We had a lot more sharing, but we didn't want the video to go on forever. But that was great. And then in the third video, I talked about fear, ego, and the case for higher consciousness. And in that video, I was talking about how we're always guided by something. The question is, what are we guided by? And how much choice do we have around what guides us on a regular basis? You know, whether it's our fear, it's our ego, which of course are very related. I could have mentioned many other things that can guide us, like anger or lust or whatever. And what is the case for higher consciousness, which has to do with being integrated and balanced and not being dominated by any fragment of consciousness, and really being guided from a place of higher consciousness. In addition, we have a video of a ritual, a spiritual ritual, which is very, very helpful if you do it on a regular basis to help bring in divine guidance and to go blank. And that's what I would really like to be talking to you about today. Is now we're getting into the nuts and bolts of the how-to. See, that we were trying to motivate you in the first couple. Now we're going from the motivation, lure you in like you really want this. and now we're going to be talking about how to lead a guided life. And there's going to be a lot of videos on this topic. Today's is going to be the first. And what I'd like us to be thinking about in this particular program is getting neutral and asking for guidance. And in addition to that, I'd like us to discuss a little bit of ways that we can check in for yeses and nos. Nothing very dramatic. So this is like the first step. Now, many of you have been guided for a long time, but you still might find that this talk is going to be helpful to help you to fine-tune what you're already doing. So I hope that it will be of service. The first thing I want to talk about is neutrality. We cannot be guided by higher consciousness if we are not neutral. Meaning if we have any kind of agenda. And it is so darn difficult not to have an agenda. Okay, here you go. Let's say you have a husband and he comes home smelling like perfume. Are you going to have an agenda? Are you going to not immediately want to find out how that happened? Now, are you going to be sitting there, in a very calm, neutral place saying, God, would it be for the highest good of all, including me, to find out whether or not my husband is being unfaithful today? I mean, that's not easy. Or if your kid has just defied you, which happens every other minute, how much neutrality are you going to have and not have the agenda of, I'm going to teach him this time, I'm going to either cajole him into being more cooperative, or I'm going to dominate him, or I'm going to shut him up before grandma gets here, so I don't want to embarrass myself in front of my mother that I can't control my children. Or you see the doors of the subway closing. I see somebody already with the look of recognition. You see the subway doors closing. Subways are trains in New York City. That's my frame of reference from my childhood. And you're going to be late for work, and you've got like 1 second to get in the door. You're not going to have an agenda to squeeze yourself in. You're going to take time and say, okay, would it most effectively unleash the power of the source for me to squeeze my way in? I mean, it is automatic that we have agendas moment by moment. I mean, one of the agendas that I talk about, I think I talk about this in the Living with Reality book, is, you wake up in the morning and you've got to go to the bathroom. Do you know what I'm saying? And that's the goal of the moment. And it's very hard to be neutral unless you're so tired that you can't get up. Then it becomes like, pee, rest, pee, rest. What should I do? But you know what I mean? We are physical creatures. We are dominated by our needs, and we feel called to do things, and some of them make perfect sense. I mean, you're going to say, well, I don't really need to check in on whether or not I have to go to the bathroom when I have to go. That seems very obvious. But what's really interesting about that is that on some level, that isn't true. That is, we can become so habituated to checking in that, when I say check in, I mean check in with guidance, that it takes no more time to check in than it does to jump up. Now, I don't mean to bring this to the absurd. Obviously, there's going to be an impulse, but then, there's also no reason why you wouldn't get up, unless you have a real physical problem, let's say, and if you jump up and you haven't given yourself enough time to wake up, you're going to twist your ankle. I mean, this seems like such a silly example. I'm going to use it. Let's say you're in a weakened condition. You're going to have a dizzy spell. You had too much to drink last night, which of course we don't do. But supposing there's something of that nature going on, and that it would be better for you to just kind of take a breath, take a moment, get yourself stable before you get up. So being able to check in a very automatic, unconscious way is about really getting clear moment by moment as to what is for our highest good. Because it may be more important to not fall getting out of bed than it is, I can't believe I'm saying this, to pee in your pants. It could be. And yet we don't think that way. We don't think that consciousness and clarity are the absolute essential building blocks of well-being. Instead, we resent anything that feels like it's going to dominate us. So, when we start making a commitment to leading a guided life, we are simultaneously making a commitment to doing that which is for our highest good and for the highest good of all. That's the first level of guidance. I'll be talking in future videos about other ways of seeing guidance as being realizing the plan of the universe, and that's the level from which we need to be getting guidance. But for now, I really want to speak about this level because that's fundamental. This is where we need to start. So many of us as children felt dominated by irrational parents. or what we at least perceived as irrational parents. And we resent being told what to do. We still haven't habituated ourselves to the idea that we are being guided to do that which is for the highest good of all, including us. And I'm going to talk about the highest good of all in a moment. I talk about this at length, by the way, in the Living with Reality book, which is available free. And it's in Platform 4, so anyone is welcome, if they're interested in this topic, to take a look at that PDF file by going to any of our websites and downloading the book for free. Discipline and guidance go hand in hand. Negative feelings towards discipline and rejection of guidance go hand in hand. You can't tell me what to do. You know. And by discipline, we're speaking about spiritual discipline, which is being disciplined by that which is for the highest good. Now, how are we to know what the highest good is? We don't. And we can't. And I think I did talk about this in the Fear, Ego, and the Case for Higher Consciousness video. So I'm not going to repeat it here, but just to reiterate the idea that we do not exist at a high enough level of consciousness to be able to evaluate everything that's going on, to even begin to have the perspective to know what should happen and what shouldn't happen. There's that famous story, Good News, Bad News, which I believe is Chinese, or I was told that it was Chinese, and someone else said it was Native American, and God knows who else has been attributed. But it's the story about the son goes out and he breaks his leg, and is it good news or it's bad news, and then the army comes by and he can't go into the army because he broke his leg, and so on and so on and so on and so on and so on. And that really, it's a wonderful story because it really shows us that it's impossible for us to be able to project enough into the future and to be able to see from a high enough perspective to, in our pea brains, be able to evaluate, even if we had any clue as to what was a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, if you're a drug addict, you may think it's good that you scored. You know, it's like, hey man, you know, I was really guided to the corner, you know, where I met this dude, and, you know. Or we won the battle, but of course we're in an evil war. But hey, look at that, we've won the battle. So we don't have the perspective, we can't see into the future, we don't have the big picture. And we are so dominated by our own agendas that we believe we know what the right outcome is, and we may not. When we go out looking for a job, we may think that getting the job is the best possible outcome, when it may be the worst possible outcome. It may be that it's the wrong job for us, and that we will have a nervous breakdown or start drinking at that job, or have an accident on the way, or there's somebody else in the room who's much more suited, or they need it more, or there's some other opportunity waiting for us around the corner. How are we to know? Where do we come off thinking that we do? We ask for guidance because we become humble. And I don't know if you're having this experience, but I find that with every day I live, and the longer I live, the more humble I become, because the more stupid I realize I am. And I don't mean that as just like something I'm saying. I really mean that. I am so much more aware of my limitations today than I was 10 years ago. Not just because I'm aging and I have an aging brain that I'm more limited, but in fact, in some ways I'm more wise than I was before, but that's because my perspective has grown and I realize how opinionated I used to be yesterday. You know? But how can we be completely open and available to guidance when we have so many opinions and agendas? Going back to accosting my husband if he comes home with the smell of perfume, I would be out of my mind. First of all, I'd be sneezing and get a headache from the smell of the perfume, and I'd be incensed. But in addition to that, my anxiety level would be through the roof, unless I was really trying to get rid of him, and then it would be a great moment of relaxation. I said, thank God, God has taken care of me here, done for me what I could not do for myself. But maybe if I shut up, the guy would come and tell me. And who knows what he would be telling me. He might be telling me that it's something, that he was with somebody and this and that, or he might tell me that he's having an affair and that it brought into his realization the fact that there were problems in our relationship and that we need to talk about them and that he wants to work them out. How do I even know what the meaning of any of that is? So I have to check in to see whether or not I'm supposed to bring it up in that moment when he comes home. But how do I stop myself from doing the impulsive thing, which is I'm so uncomfortable, I've got to do something about it now. Which brings us back to the peeing example, because I'm so uncomfortable I'm going to get up, but in the process of doing so I'm going to sprain my ankle, fall on my face, and break my nose. Then I'm really going to be uncomfortable. But our discomfort, and our discomfort with discomfort, causes us to act impulsively as we try to resolve whatever discomfort there is in that moment without seeking guidance. Now, there are many ways to be guided. And I'm not going to tell you how you should be guided. But we are going to offer some suggestions of things that have worked for us. And that's a lot of what the rest of this particular talk is going to be about. But one thing is true no matter how you are being guided, whatever mechanism you use, which is you have to be neutral. And how in heaven's name do we become neutral? It sounds so simple, doesn't it? Well, be guided. Ask God, and you'll know. I know lots of people who have thought they were being very intuitive, and they're just making stuff up. I've seen it. I've probably done it.
Nope.
But what may be, impelling us is a need to look like a channel, for example. I remember a woman who was traveling around when I lived in Oregon, Southern Oregon, and she came and she said that she was channeling some discarnate entity, and she spoke very eloquently about a relationship that I was having with this man that I was there with that had no relationship to reality, none, was completely beautified, sanitized, was not anything near the truth, but she was in the energy, and I recognized that, because we all can get into that, especially in our spirituality, where we're feeling so uplifted by what we're saying that we don't even want to check if our feet are anywhere near the ground. So she felt very uplifted, and it was just beautiful, very poetic. Nothing related to the truth. So we have to watch for our spiritual egos when we are embarking on a life of guidance. And there are other ways that we can get tripped up. For example, I may feel guided to tell you something about yourself. Yes, I'm being guided to do that. But it's really that I'm being guided by my anger to tell you something about yourself. I may feel I'm looking for a happy ending, what my version of a happy ending is, and I'm absolutely certain that I've gotten guidance to go in that direction. Very hard. This is the work of a lifetime. This is not the work of a half an hour. To become neutral means we have to do a lot of healing so that we are less and less dominated by those fragments of our consciousness that propel us in situations like that. So let's be honest, first and foremost, and acknowledge that it isn't easy to be guided, and it's not easy to recognize when we're guided and when we're full of shit. But that should not stop us from making the effort, because being guided is a way of feeling connected to the universe. It is a way of being of greater service, because through guidance we can be of greater service to others. And we can also receive a lot of wisdom about ourselves when we're listening. And also, let's be honest about one other thing, which is that we can be extremely guided in one arena and completely off in another. Because the degree of our attachment to whatever we want the outcome to be, even if the outcome is just looking spiritual, could vary. And so we can be more vulnerable in certain arenas. And we need to be honest with ourselves about that. And then finally, I'd like to share that in being neutral, we are being neutral about outcomes, which means that we know that if we are being guided, that will not necessarily mean the outcome that we would like to have. So if I have an illness and I'm asking for guidance as to where to go to get help, and I follow that guidance, and I really am getting that guidance, I may have an experience, but I may not get help. I'll get help with some emotional transformation that I'm going through, but I'm not getting help for the thing I went there for. I mean, it's like I didn't go to the mechanic to pay him $500 to challenge my ego. I went there for him to fix my car. So when I go for guidance and God tells me to go to that mechanic and he doesn't fix my car, but my ego is challenged, I have to say, "Thank you very much."
Thank you, David.
Yeah. I have to tell myself that the lesson was worth the $500. Or I have to tell myself that he really needed that $500 more than I did, and that it had nothing to do with the car. It was just God's way of getting the money from my pocket into his. So what can I say? So I highly recommend that each one of you, if you're interested in becoming truly guided, is going through a lot of healing processes where you, as all of we are also doing all the time, to continue to clear ourselves from the fears and from the angers, from the reactivity that comes from our fragmented consciousness, so that we can become more neutral. So now, once we're neutral, or we make an effort to be neutral, we're ready to ask for guidance. I should have put that a little differently. Once we're ready to ask for guidance, we have to become neutral, which means we have to stop. And one way that we can stop is to take a breath. And many of you have used breathing as a way of clearing yourselves and as a tool in spiritual development. So any kind of a breath will do. Sometimes, for some people, it is go for a run. Get the, or if necessary, take a pillow and beat it up. Get out the emotion, expend energy, take a breath, talk to a friend, get all your complaints out in advance, yell at God, listen to some music, see whatever you need to do to expend the energy that you need to in order to become neutral. There may be a moment where you're able to become neutral just like that. You may just say, hey, I know how to do it. I'm going to get on the cloud. This isn't that big a deal. I don't really care whether we go to the Chinese restaurant or the Italian restaurant. I can get neutral about this. So, okay. And you just can feel in your space that you're neutral. Feeling neutral is feeling calm, empty, without an agenda. No intention, as I like to call it. I have no intention. The other thing that you can do is ask yourself, do I have an intention or agenda here? And just going through that self-examination process can be so incredibly helpful, because so often I do have an agenda. We used to see this a lot when we had our workshops over the weekend, and people would go out to dinner after a workshop together, and everyone would check in together as a group to see what restaurant to go to for dinner. Well, everybody had to disclose their agenda. Well, I don't like the food there, or I'm tired of that place, or the last time we were there was somebody singing and it was too loud, or whatever it is. I don't think, and and so everybody got their out. And it was all disclosed. Nobody had any hidden agendas, because, oh my God, one of the biggest enemies to being guided is the hidden agenda. Sometimes hidden from ourselves, but usually hidden from others, because we don't want them to know we have an agenda, because we want them to think that we're neutral, so that we're being divinely guided when we really have an agenda. Because the answer to that question should be yes, I know that in advance. So anyway, when everybody got their agendas out, we all kind of laughed. And then we'd breathe and check in. And I'll tell you a little bit more about the check-in process that we use. So that's another way, is just to disclose what the agenda is. And one of the most important things that we do in the stream that helps prepare us to ask for guidance when there's more than one person involved is to see what might be going on about this and discuss it. And even if it's just for me, I may need some guidance. I may go to someone else and say, I need your support. I need to talk about all of these things that I'm feeling and see if I can't get down to the fear that might be underneath it, or the egoic agenda that might be underneath. And so guidance is not a one-step process of just asking the question. You'll see that it's a more complicated process, a process of becoming neutral, although that can happen instantly. And sometimes I have to say that the power of Source and the guidance from above is so strong that it screams down at you, even when you're fighting a tooth and nail and don't want to get neutral. It's like, take the right hand turn, dummy. Got it? Go right. Are you listening? Go right. That happens sometimes, doesn't it? And oh, thank God it does. Of course, sometimes I really want to take the right-hand turn because there's a guy there who's really cute, and I really want to meet him. I'm just hoping that I'm going to pass by, and there's that voice that's telling me to go right when I really should be going left. But usually there's time to really process something and to get it all out and to see what might be driving us. And we have some techniques for releasing agendas too, which I'm not going to talk about here. And then we ask a yes or no question, mostly because we are not able yet to trust ourselves to get complex answers. When I first started channeling, when I had my psychic awakening in 1980, all I got was yes and no. And it was like this. I discovered that I could see past lives. I don't know if they really exist or not, but if they did, I saw them. And if they don't exist, I saw something. So anyway, that's a whole long story about what karma really is. I'll skip that. But anyway, so I saw past lives. And then I would look at the person in the past life and I'd say, do I know this person in this life? And I would hear like it was coming from a star. Yes! Or no! This is how my career started. But yes and no. It was really... And then I'd say, well, is it Uncle Harry? No. Is it? It was like that. And I just kept practicing with yes and no, yes and no, and yes and no. And I actually got audio information, which is how I do a lot of guidance, is through words. And I say words, I mean, I don't hear a voice, but I would hear words. You know, the words would come to me. Or every once in a while, I would see a word, Father, you know, written in blood in front of me. That was... but usually it was yes or no. And see, that made things pretty simple because almost everything can be broken down into yes and no. Just like, as we discover in the computer world, just everything is a 1 or a 0. It's amazing! It's amazing what you can do with a 1 and a 0 and a yes and a no, right? But you have to ask the right question. But it could be, am I supposed to eat whipped cream and ice cream for lunch? No! So I wouldn't sit there and say, what should I eat for lunch, and expect miso soup with sprouted quinoa to come out when I first started to get guidance, but I can ask for a yes and a no. Well, should I have miso soup for breakfast? Yes or no. And why I'm mentioning this is because this is kind of a how-to for people. It's like we can start practicing today how to get yes and how to get no. And so if you can break down your questions into little yeses and no's, you can start getting guidance. Now, can you completely trust it? No. Is it good practice? Yes. Start with something you're not too attached to. Like, what earrings should I wear today? Male or female? Should I wear earrings today? That would be the first thing. Should I even get out of bed and get dressed today? So, No, I'm with you on that. So the first thing that we want to learn, even before I get to the question about is it for the highest good of all, including me too, is I want James to demonstrate some techniques for yes and no. As I said, you may get audio experiences. Audio? Not audio, right? Anyway, you hear it. For some of us, it's a feeling in our bodies. You know, yes feels like this, and no feels like bleh. You know? People have yeses on the right side of the head, and no is on the left side of the head. And James has some yeses and nos to share with you.
Okay. I'll share with you about muscle testing to get yeses and nos. It's something that's been developed that's used a lot by chiropractors to discover ailments, discover what's going on with the body, discover what's good for you dietarily. You know, some of you are nodding your heads. You've seen it happen. You know, the testing of the arm. They put a sugar cube in your mouth. Is this good for you? No. Is the arm down? Yes. Is the arm strong? Weak is no. And yes is strong, that sort of thing. What I do is I use the body pendulum, but first I have to get tuned up. And I'm going to have to switch to another microphone in order to demonstrate this. In the muscle testing, the first thing to do is to first find out if you're getting accurate information. So I'd like everybody to please stand up and do these things along with me. So this is called the body pendulum for getting a yes or a no. And you set it up ahead of time that a yes, your body will lean forward, and a no, your body will lean back. So basically you're getting answers intuitively through your unconscious, and your unconscious is moving the body. You're not moving the body at all. You're just standing there in a neutral position, kind of like the way my feet are, kind of parallel, even, so that you're just evenly balanced. And you're allowing yourself to be moved by the answer, you see. But before you can be moved accurately by the answer, you need to test as to whether you're tuned up. And so the way I test that is I just ask the question, source, please give me a yes, hold. Oh, I went back. That means no. So I'm not tuned up. Now, we have a system of meridians all throughout our body. And I was taught that the thalamus up here is where we need to tap. Either you can tap with the tips of your fingers or with your fist. I like doing it with my fist because it gets the job done quicker and stronger. Oh, Tarzan! Yeah, Tarzan! Or just your fingertips. Okay, so everybody do this with me. Okay, you're going to ask the question. I'll just ask the question for everybody and just allow your body to be moved one way or the other. Okay, source, please give me a yes. Hold. So did you feel your body move forward or back? Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Sadly, I'm still out of tune. And my body went backward. So I got to do more of this.
James, are we supposed, since you're saying hold, are we supposed to be still?
Yeah. The reason I say hold is because that's to go neutral. It's like, hold your horses, just hold steady, and just wait. Just wait for however long it takes for your body to be moved forward or back.
So why did you say you weren't tuned?
Well, because if I were tuned up, source, please give me a yes, I'd go forward like this. But I didn't. I went backward, which is a no. Backward is a no, forward is a yes.
It's called switched.
I'm laughing at the expression tuned up because if anybody remembers the series NYPD Blue,
Yes.
some of the detectives would talk about tuning somebody up, and that meant working.
That's funny. Well, maybe the ego needs to be worked over a little bit here. So I've got to tap more. I don't know if anybody else needs to tap more, but I do. And so another thing that helps me to surrender my ego is I reaffirm, thy will, not mine, be done. And I just get into a sense of surrender to that. And now I ask, Holy Spirit, please give me a yes, hold. Still not quite there, but I'm getting closer. That was a less of a movement backward.
So this is a good time. This is a good time also to ask yourself what's going on. If you punch yourself in the chest 5 times and you're still not tuned up, then there's something going on, and this becomes a great. Well, this is really great because the fact that it isn't working is just information.
That's good
right?
information.
Right, and it tells you that, gee, there's something going on, that there's some emotion that might be so.
Well, I do feel some anxiety.
Yeah.
I mean, here I am trying to demonstrate this, and normally
To millions of people who are watching this video right now.
So, what was that?
To millions of people.
Millions of people,
Yeah,
that's right.
right. So,
Like this morning, it was easy. I walk into the closet, the walk-in closet, and I ask, would it most effectively release the power of the source on earth for me to wear something in green today? And obviously the answer was yes. First the pants, then the shirt, and then the specific shirt, all of that.
How did you know to ask for green? Why didn't you ask for purple or something?
Well, actually, the first thing I asked was, should I wear the same pants today as I wore yesterday, which were beige? And I got no. So that opened it up. And then I looked around and says, what about the green slacks? So like that. Yeah, okay. Well, I'm feeling more relaxed. That might help. Okay, I'll ask again. Source, please give me a yes, hold. Hooray! Okay. It went
Disclosure, disclosure,
forward.
disclosure.
Yeah, that helps a lot too. If there's something creating an emotional block, like for me it was anxiety, talking about it, processing, and now I could do it. Okay, whereas earlier, just by myself in the closet, no problem. But here, different context, so I had to disclose, process, clear it, and so that I could get the yes or no. So has everybody? Let's everybody do it again now. I just say the word hold so that you will hold steady and not make it happen, but just allow it to happen. So I say hold after the question. So, source, please give me a yes, hold. Was everybody able to move? Did your body move forward? Anybody move? Okay, great. Okay, now I ask the other one. Source, please give me a no, hold. Okay.
Cool, isn't
Did
it?
everybody go back on that? Okay. Even if it was just ever so slightly, that's still an answer. She went so far back she fell over. That's a strong answer. Okay, good. This means we're now tuned up. This is wonderful. This is a breakthrough. Because now you're in neutral, so you can ask for guidance. For me, it was like, okay, what should I wear today? Should I wear the beige pants? I got no. I looked around, should I wear the green pants? I got yes. So that wasn't my mind telling me, oh, I'm going to wear that. Because I thought, well, I'll wear the beige pants again. That'd be the most convenient thing. I already have my stuff in the pockets, the belt on, no fuss, no bother. But the guidance was, wear the green pants. Yeah, wear the
But
green.
see, the thought, the inspiration had to come into you to have to feel the energy of the green, which was also the guidance.
Yes, that's
Because
part of
there's
it.
all those colors you could have asked in your mind.
That's right.
But that wasn't. The guidance came in on an energetic level of the green, and you looked at the green and you felt the harmony. You felt that resonance with that green color.
But it was all intuitive. It wasn't my mind saying, I prefer this. So I do that with the food and all that stuff. So anyway, that's the body pendulum. Now, there's a couple of other ways to do this as well. Now, if I'm doing a hypnotherapy session with somebody...
Yeah, the body pendulum is not one that you do while you're driving, that's for sure, to pick up on.
Yeah. The next one I'll teach you is putting the thumb and the pinky together like this.
Now people can sit down.
You can sit
Correct.
down now. Yeah, this is the sit-down technique. Yeah. And then you're going to be testing it by making a loop with your other thumb and index finger of your left hand, and you're going to be pulling to see if it's strong or if it's weak. Okay? So please give me a yes. What?
Could you use your ring finger?
I've never done that. The pinky is a little weaker,
But
the
you
ring
could.
finger feels pretty weak too. So
Mine is so weak, it's, my hand doesn't go like that.
You can use any finger.
any two fingers can work.
That if you're talking at the microphone, people on Google Hangout cannot hear you.
Okay. Yeah, if you need to. So Helen was asking, can you use the ring finger? You test it out. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Just like we did there, same questioning process. So I put the thumb and the pinky together, and then I loop the thumb and the index finger of the other hand into it, so you've got like links, like a linked fence. Okay? And so...
So it's not the same fingers on each one?
No. On the left hand is the index finger and the thumb. On the right hand is the pinky and the thumb. The pinky and the thumb of the right hand, it's a better test because it's harder for you to control it consciously if it's just the pinky. Whereas if you use your index finger on that hand, you could resist stronger. See? Because you're used to using the index finger. Question?
I just wanted to say that if something doesn't work for you, then you obviously have to try any other finger. But the point that James is saying is that you're always trying to find something where you're less habituated
Yes.
to use your will.
Yes.
Does it matter which arm you're using, which hand you're using as the tester and the testee?
No, it doesn't really matter. You could switch it. I'm right-handed.
Because I feel
so
more
used to do it
comfortable
this way.
using,
But if you're
my
more
left
comfortable
hand.
doing it the other way with the other hands, reversing them, that's fine. Whatever works. And so it's the same process. So a yes is strong, you pull, and a no is not strong enough to resist pulling it apart. Okay, so I say, give me a yes, give me a no, like that. Now sometimes a no takes a little longer to get. If you resist harder, it takes longer. But sooner or later, you're going to just feel that the no is weaker than the yes. Okay, so that's how that one works. So you can be sitting there and wondering what to, so supposing you're at a soup plantation and you're wondering what to eat. So you could just be going through the foods and saying, well, should I have the Chinese salad, and you do the little finger testing like that. And then each item you could just test it. Should I have potatoes or should I have pasta? No on the pasta. I have an allergy to wheat, so my body knows that. The intuition knows that. So that's that technique. I use it quite often in the hypnotherapy when I ask the question, okay, they've gone back, regressed back to what's supposed to be the formative experience. Is this it? And I ask, is it it? And I get a yes or a no. So that works real well. Now, then there's a third technique where supposing I don't get to use both hands. One hand is occupied. Like maybe I'm driving and I can have my left hand on the steering wheel. Well, I call this the finger flick, where you just do the thumb and the ring finger, like, see there, you got the thumbnail of the ring finger here, like that. And a yes is strong and a no is weak, and it flicks out. You see, you're trying to have the thumb and the ring finger be strong and to stay together, like that. Or if it's a no, then it's weak and it flicks out. Yes is strong, weak, like that. No is no. And I would tell you a little story. Before I ever knew about the stream, before I ever met Beth, I was living over in Oceanside, and a friend of mine suggested I just cultivate my intuition and allow myself to be guided to where I needed to go next, you know. And this was in December of 2010. And I just jumped in the car, and I could have gone south, north, or any parts east, but not too much west since there's the ocean over there. And originally I thought, well, I'll head north. I know some stuff up there that could be interesting, whatever I just wanted to look into. But I just allowed myself to get in the car and do the muscle testing to see where I was to go. And I wound up getting on the 76, heading in this direction, toward here, heading east. And so before I took a turn from where I lived, I'd ask, should I turn left or right? And then I would get a yes on turning left, and I turned left. And then I got a yes on turning right onto the 76. And then I stayed on the 76, and then I came to an intersection where there's Old River Road. And I asked, should I go left or go straight? Should I go left? And I got a yes, so I turned left. And I was heading toward this area. I was being guided intuitively to this area. And then a few weeks after that, Beth and I met through Conscious Singles. You know, it's like internet, cyberspace, but I was intuitively guided to this area. So I had no idea where I was going, but intuition knew, higher consciousness knew. So this stuff really does work. And so if you just practice it, this is, to my mind, one of the easiest ways to get good information from the intuition, to get the yeses and the nos in a more accurate way. But always remember that if you start getting off, check to see if you went out of tune.
Or if you get too many answers that you want,
Yeah.
And you keep getting answers you want.
yeah, check on whether or not you're tuned up.
Yeah. So there it is. So that's one of the most basic, simplest, easiest ways to get accurate, intuitive answers. Yeah. Oh, here, come on up. Oh, here we go.
There's a part of me that's reluctant to say this because it could be interpreted as negative or skeptical, but the thing that came to me, the thought I had nothing came to me. The thought I had when you first asked us to do this, standing, was, well, how is this any different than a Ouija board, which was always something that was kind of poo-pooed or, just something that, I don't know, it wasn't explainable to me. But it seemed like, how could that be? So I guess I have, saying that I have distrust of something that I can't quite, and yet when I was up there I didn't feel that at all. But I'm just saying, that's probably relatively common, huh?
Which,
What I just described
Yeah, the skepticism.
as having the skepticism about
sure.
it, but
Back in the early 70s, I had a spiritual teacher who first learned to get intuitive guidance through the Ouija board. And he wound up getting pretty accurate stuff. For instance, one of the things he ultimately got was the name of the overriding spirit of Mount Shasta, an angelic presence. And the name he got was Duja. And I never heard a name like that before. And then some years later, there was another woman who was very psychic, who was one of the friends of the founders of the Vinhorn community, who was founding a community in Northern California, and she took trips over to Mount Shasta, and she psychically got that the name of that spirit of the mountain was Duja, completely independently, some years and years and years later. So the Ouija board process, it's just a tool. Tarot, a tool. Automatic writing, a tool. Now I find that when I've done automatic writing is where you just allow yourself, you try to get neutral, you ask questions, and then you just start allowing your hand to doodle, and then allow stuff to start writing through you. And I found that I could color that and affect that more than if I'm doing the body pendulum. Or if you're doing the Ouija board, you might be making it move somewhat with your hand.
well, that's what I experienced when I was,
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, it was moving, but what was I moving it? Was somebody
I'd like
else
to say
moving it?
something about, I'm really glad you asked that question, Richard. This series is going to be speaking about guidance in a sequential way on different levels, which I referred to before. Right now we're talking about getting guidance. Like there is a higher consciousness and then there is us and we are being guided. As we go forward in this series and we develop a different understanding about our relationship to the universe, then we shift the way we see everything, and then we begin to see ourselves as the agents of the divine consciousness. So that would mean, for example, if your hand is moving, your hand may be that agent of the divine consciousness that is moving the Ouija board. So the separation between you and source becomes less and less. For the purposes of what we're trying to do today, and for people who, especially people who are beginning, this is a very good way to get started. And so there's a lot of ways in which we can deceive ourselves, which is what I was talking about before, because we're not neutral. But it's also, we will at some point, be shifting into a different understanding of our relationship to Source itself, that we are in fact aspects of God, and what we feel and experience is coming from some level of God's consciousness. Then it becomes more complicated. Well, which level of God's consciousness is it coming from, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't want to go there yet, because this is like This is our first class on this, and this is, I think, really the right way to start. But I do want to address that, I don't want to skip that it's more complicated because, that we may, just like Christopher was saying to James about his impulse to even ask about the green, there may have been, that impulse may have come from higher consciousness. However, I also want to say that sometimes I have an impulse to ask about something, and then the answer is no. So that going into neutrality is always, from a practical level, a very important step, even if I've gotten an impulse to go in a particular direction, because I'm not sure what level of consciousness that impulse is coming from. And we'll be talking more about the connection between us and the divine and how that works later. But I did want to say that, of course, it's perfectly normal that you would be skeptical. Is there something else you want to...
Well, it just makes me realize the influence this is from my childhood that are still so strong.
Yeah.
And what I remember, and I've had thoughts about this in the last couple of days too, but I feel like I'm monopolizing, so I don't know that I need to say all of this, but yeah.
Well, yes, I think we have a lot of fears, and I'd like to also corroborate that when I first had my psychic awakening, I made a Ouija board of sorts. I wrote the letters A to Z in a circle. I had a pendulum, and I sat there and I had the pendulum was swinging all over the place. And I got these messages to do things that were uncanny. On the other hand, what I later found, and I used to use muscle testing when I did counseling, that I would use muscle testing on my client and ask their body. But what I discovered ultimately is that was my intuition was way more accurate than any of those things. Ultimately after I had developed it. But I would like to go back to one very simple point, is that if we keep practicing on these small things like the pants and all of that, we begin to develop the habit of asking, the habit of neutrality, which allows us to become more and more open to more and more guidance. Yes? Did you have a question?
One of the things that came up for me in listening is when you get the answer, you act on it.
Yes.
If you don't, then
Yes.
when you hear it, it's important to do it.
Right, and not judge the process by the result.
That's a toughie.
Yes, but that's, as I was trying to say before, maybe you were supposed to take that car to that mechanic, and he wasn't supposed to fix it, and you were supposed to pay him the $500. And that's another level of spiritual development. I am wondering if we should, I just want to give you the question, and if we should close this for today, for the length of this video and for the class, it's, and with the cliffhanger. That more will be revealed when we do our next video about how to even work with this question. But the question that I'm suggesting that you work with between now and the next time you see our video is it for the highest good of all, including me, to wear these pants, go there, apply for that job, do whatever. Because we're asking for the highest good. We're not looking for our ego's gratification. We're looking for the highest good of all. And that must also include myself. But that brings in a whole other dimension about our connection in the oneness and why it's the highest good of all. So that's another long topic. But in the meantime, just use that question anyway, even though we haven't gotten into depth with it, and practice. And good luck with it. And we will continue, this is the cliffhanger, with delving into that question of the highest good of all and what that means, and how you will be able to learn to use that step as not only with yourself, but with others, and end the old power struggles that always go on between people about I want this and I want that and I want the other thing. And that allowing ourselves to have divine consciousness guide us is the way that we can overcome those battles. And all of that is coming up in our next video. So until then, this is Beth Green at the Stream and the Center for Healing and Higher Consciousness.